Wheelchairs are first come, first serve. The blonde in the fake Burberry scarf shrieked these words while already dragging my grandmother's chair away from the triage desk. Grandma Lorraine's IV tugged hard enough that the pole started to tip, the monitor beeping went absolutely frantic, and the woman snapped at the nurse like she was ordering a latte at a coffee shop. "I have Pilates in 40 minutes. Chop chop." She clapped her hands twice for emphasis, her perfectly manicured nails clicking together like a disapproving teacher. "I'm Nate Ellison, a former barista who traded pulling espresso shots for pulling night shifts as an EMT. I know every squeaky hallway, every flickering light, and every temperamental vending machine at Maple Ridge Regional Hospital in Cedar Valley, Ohio. I've been bringing people through these doors for 3 years now, and tonight's passenger was special. Grandma Lorraine, my passenger for the evening, is a retired librarian with a smile that can quiet a brawl and a voice that once commanded silence in the nonfiction section. She also hasn't been able to move her legs since a spinal infarct last year left her paralyzed from the waist down. The scarfed hurricane who just grabbed her wheelchair introduced herself with the kind of confidence that comes from watching too many hospital dramas. "I'm Megan Stalworth, a patient advocate liaison," she announced, flipping her hair over one shoulder. Translation: lady with a clipboard she brought from home and a lanyard from a medical conference she crashed. She waved that visitor badge like it was an all-access pass to the Mayo Clinic, announcing loudly to anyone within earshot that she was auditing healthcare experiences for the greater good. And for her TikTok, she added with a wink, pulling out her phone to start recording. Megan slapped a pastel pink sticker on Grandma's wheelchair that read reserved in cursive letters, like she was claiming a pool lounger at a Vegas resort. Policy clearly states that ambulatory folks must surrender mobility devices to urgent patrons, she declared with the certainty of someone who'd never read an actual hospital policy in her life. She pointed down at her designer sneakers, the kind that cost more than my weekly paycheck. "I'm urgent because my bunions are flaring up something fierce. I need to sit down immediately." When the triage nurse, a patient woman named Sandra who I'd seen handle actual emergencies with grace, tried to push back and explain that the wheelchair belonged to a patient, Megan's voice went up 3 octaves. She started barking fake rules she was clearly making up on the spot. "There's a $500 non-compliance fee for refusing to cooperate with patient advocates," she announced, wagging her finger at Sandra. "I can HIPAA report all of you." She began counting down from 10 like we were misbehaving toddlers in a timeout situation, her voice getting shriller with each number. She actually tried to pry Grandma's hands off the armrests, not seeming to notice or care that they were already limp and unresponsive. Then she turned to lecture the entire waiting room, her voice carrying over the sound of crying babies and coughing patients. "The ADA provides protections for people who identify as mobility impaired today, and I identify as someone who needs this chair." She pivoted to me with an accusatory finger pointed right at my chest, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "If you were a real EMT, you'd know that wheelchairs are community property in medical facilities. It's literally in the handbook." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that arguing with people like this never ends well. Instead, I watched in disbelief as she spotted a volunteer vest hanging on a coat rack by the staff break room. She yanked it off the hook, threw it on over her expensive activewear, and suddenly transformed herself into what she believed was a hospital authority figure. "Wheelchair redistribution begins now," she announced to the lobby like she was starting a flash mob. She began rolling my grandmother toward the automatic exit doors, completely ignoring Grandma Lorraine's confused protests and my attempts to intervene. Outside in the humid evening air, she parked Grandma right at the curb next to the no parking zone to stage inventory, as she called it. Then she jogged back to her white crossover SUV and repositioned it to block the entire ambulance bay, hazards flashing like she was doing everyone a favor. When hospital security, a young guy named Trevor who usually spent his shifts walking the parking garage, approached and politely asked her to move her vehicle, she chirped back in an overly sweet, sing-song voice. "I'm operational staff now. Can't you even read?" She gestured at the stolen volunteer vest like it was a doctor's coat. She actually pulled out her personal clipboard and tried to write Trevor up for questioning her authority, creating some kind of incident report on notebook paper. Behind her, I heard the wail of approaching sirens. An ambulance carrying an actual emergency had to swerve around her illegally parked vehicle and use the side ramp instead, losing precious seconds. People in the parking lot had their phones out, filming the entire spectacle. This was going viral whether Megan wanted it to or not. That's when the real cavalry finally arrived, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Janelle appeared first, the actual patient advocate with an actual hospital badge and 15 years of experience. She was followed closely by Officer Boudreau from the Cedar Valley Police Department, his hand resting casually on his belt. Behind them came Dr. Ahmed, the charge physician who knew me by name and by the vanilla lattes I smuggled him during his double shifts. I quickly handed over Grandma's medical chart and her disability placard, my hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Janelle spoke in a calm, measured tone that somehow carried more authority than all of Megan's shrieking combined. "Ma'am, impersonating medical staff and obstructing emergency services isn't a vibe or a social media moment. It's actually a crime. Several crimes, in fact." Meanwhile, my EMT partner Devin, who'd been quietly documenting everything, pulled up Megan's own TikTok livestream on his phone. He slowly panned the camera toward the posted ADA and EMTALA signage on the wall, then zoomed in on the hospital's equipment tag attached to Grandma's wheelchair. The tag clearly read in bold letters, "Assigned to Lorraine Ellison. Patient property. Do not remove." The comments on Megan's live video were absolutely going feral. "Girl, that lady is paralyzed," read one comment with a skull emoji. "You're literally stealing from a disabled person," read another. "Someone call 911, wrote a third commenter, apparently not realizing we were already at the hospital. The view count was climbing into the thousands. Megan's face went from confident to confused to indignant in about 3 seconds. She huffed loudly, folded her arms across her chest in defiance, and dramatically plopped herself down into a spare wheelchair that happened to be sitting near the entrance. What she didn't realize in her moment of theatrical protest was that this particular chair was unlocked and positioned right at the top of the accessible ramp. The moment her full weight hit the seat, physics took over. The automatic ramp's slight incline became her enemy. She rolled backwards like a runaway shopping cart, her eyes going wide with surprise. Her hand shot out and clipped the yellow wet floor sign that the janitor had just put up, sending it clattering across the tile. She sailed in perfect slow motion across the lobby, arms windmilling, straight toward the hospital's Cologne Cancer Awareness Fair display that had been set up that morning. The centerpiece was a giant inflatable walk-through colon, bright pink and about 12 feet long, meant to educate people about colorectal health. Megan disappeared into the pink polyp tunnel entrance with a muffled shriek. For a moment, there was just stunned silence in the lobby. Then she erupted from the other end like she'd been shot from a cannon, the volunteer vest now twisted around her like a cape, and somehow, impossibly, wearing one of the foam hemorrhoid awareness rings around her neck like the world's most unfortunate necklace. Her hair was sticking up in every direction. Her fake Burberry scarf was trailing behind her like a sad flag of surrender. That's when the sprinklers kicked in. Apparently, Megan had been vaping in the lobby, which she'd tried to hide, but the sensitive smoke detectors finally caught on. The sprinklers directly above the colon display activated, spraying just enough water to completely plaster her makeup. Her mascara ran down her face in zebra stripes, and her contouring became abstract art. Security guards, no longer amused, escorted her toward the exit, her shoes squeaking on the wet floor. Officer Boudreau stepped forward, pulling out his citation book with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. "Ma'am, I'm citing you for impersonating medical staff, obstructing an emergency vehicle entrance, and creating a public disturbance. You'll need to appear in court." He handed her the ticket, and her wet fingers left smudges on the paper. Behind us, I heard the rumble of a tow truck pulling into the parking lot. The operator hooked up Megan's crossover and lifted it off the ground like it was a Ms. Park tricycle, hauling it away to the impound lot while she watched in horror. As security led her past where we stood with Grandma Lorraine, my grandmother looked up at Megan with an expression of pure serenity, like a church bell on a quiet Sunday morning. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "you can have my seat if you ever truly need it." Her voice held no anger, no judgment, just the gentle kindness of someone who'd spent 40 years helping people find the right books. Megan sniffed, her voice small and defeated now. "I just needed people to follow the rules." Grandma Lorraine smiled, the same smile that had welcomed thousands of children into her library. "Me too, dear. That's why I let the professionals make them." We wheeled Grandma back to the triage desk where Sandra the nurse was waiting with a warm blanket and an apologetic smile. The nurse offered Megan, who was dripping and miserable by the door, A pamphlet about community resources and mental health services. Megan refused it with a wave of her hand, then asked in a voice barely above a whisper if the hospital validated parking. Sandra shook her head gently. It didn't. $187 later, after Megan paid the impound fee, towing charge, and parking citation, she posted one final video about medical tyranny and healthcare discrimination. The top comment, with over 50,000 likes, simply read, "The tyranny was gravity, babe."